good.
Okay.
So after that, you'll be involved. Everyone at West Point does some sort of athletic activity every afternoon, whether it's intramural sports, club sports, or NCAA athletics. So you'll do that until about 5:30, 6 o'clock at night. Go to dinner, and then honestly, most cadets go back and do homework until you go to bed. And depending on your homework load, depends on how late you stay up. So this week has been pretty busy for me, and so I've been staying up pretty late. But then that's a pretty typical day. Thomas can talk about hers.
I would say as a freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior, it changes a lot. So freshman year, my average day was getting up at about like 5:30 or 6. I went to classes, did the intramural athletics, did all that stuff. But I did a lot of other things outside of class and outside of academics and sports, which I did a free ballroom dance lesson. So there's a lot of stuff you can do, and there's a lot of other activities you can do besides academics. And you still can have fun. I promise you. He doesn't leave very much time for it, but I promise there is time for that. Um, every year you're going to get a different job. So as a sophomore, you'll be in charge of only like one person. So your schedule will kind of change as you go on throughout West Point. Also, depending on whether or not you're a double major, you may or may not have less or more classes. Right now, I have 4 classes on like one day and then 4 on the other, which is a lot for a senior. Most seniors only have 2 or 3 per day. So as you complete all of your requirements, you'll have less and less to do, but you'll also have possibly more on the military or physical side. So it's very dependent on what you choose to do and how much work you choose to put in. So if you want to do all of your homework for all of your classes, you're definitely going to be up late and you're definitely going to have a lot to do. But that's usually what we strive for. But there's a lot of wiggle room depending on how you choose to set up your own experience here. I also did a semester abroad, which was very, very very much less structured than West Point, and it's completely paid for by West Point. So that it's a completely different experience that's also available in addition to AIDs during the summer. So it's all up to you, pretty much. How difficult is it to manage sports and academics? Sometimes difficult, but like we said,
West Point's really a big exercise in time management, I think. Um, it's all just about how you use your time when you decide to do different things. If you sit around watching movies all afternoon, you're probably not going to get much homework done. So,
we have another question that says, "How much is the tuition?" West Point is it's a complete scholarship, so it's paid for. I believe at the beginning I paid $2,000, which was just a stipend for a computer and a printer and just everything that West Point gives you. But in terms of how much is tuition every year, it's completely free. Books are also free. They give you money for books. They give you a monthly stipend. So if you're worried about paying for college, um, that wouldn't really be an issue here at West Point.
On the flip side, as a trade-off for getting 4 free years of education, after you graduate, you spend 5 years in the Army active duty as an officer. You commission upon graduation. So really, when you come to West Point, your ultimate goal has to be to become an officer in the Army, because that's what you will. If you come to West Point and graduate, you will be an officer in the U.S. Army.
See if we missed any other questions up there. I'm not sure.
Hey, just so you know, so this is Major Gazal. He's actually a regional commander, and so I let him sit in the seat because he's an expert and he manages all the files for Northeast United States. So welcome to you, Major Gazal.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Is West Point handing out letters of assurance this year? I believe they always do.
Well, last year we did not actually.
Oh, okay.
We are handing out very limited letters of assurance, and if you received one, you should know by now. If not, unfortunately, you did not qualify. Before we continue on to other questions, I just want to give you some generic information of how we evaluate each file. The 3 numbers you should always know is 60, 30, 10. 60% of your application is based on academics, and half of that is based on your standardized test scores, and the other half of that is based on your high school class rank. 30% of your file is based on leadership potential, and we specifically look at leadership on the athletic field, in school and in the community, and in the classroom specifically. The last 10% of that 60-30-10 rule is the candidate fitness assessment. And as many of you know, the candidate fitness assessment is a 6-event test that's 1 mile run, shuttle run, push-ups, pull-ups, and sit-ups. So 60-30-10, once again, that's how we evaluate your file. And if there's ever a question of what you need to do to improve your file, improve your chances of getting to West Point, just remember 60% is based on academics.
We have another question.
Okay.
And how many slots are available for special operations? So this is an interesting question. As seniors, we're putting in our branch preferences. So branches in the Army are, for example, infantry, military intelligence, transportation, those types of things. Special operations, there is no branching specifically special operations. Graduating out of West Point, you cannot branch special operations. So there's not a specific number of slots for that available.
As an officer, later on, as you're a first lieutenant promotable or captain, is when you'll you'll go through the process of joining special forces, special operations, that sort of thing.
Awesome. You guys answered the question, so I don't need to say anything else. Good job.
I have another question from Matthew. What are your summers like?
Okay. This is another one that is definitely based on the individual. So I'll tell you a little bit about my summers. They're a little bit more strict. Obviously, your first summer, you'll be going through cadet basic training. After that, you will do Buckner's cadet field training, which every rising sophomore must go through. It was 3.5 weeks or 3 weeks this summer. I was there as a staff officer. So after that, that's basic field training type of stuff. But after that, many people go to airborne and air assault school during that summer. You're also required to do a leadership detail, so be a squad leader, work at a field training event, work as a squad leader in cadet basic training. So you have to do some sort of leadership detail. In addition, you can do academic internships. I went to France for a intensive language course. I also worked with a senator in Washington, D.C. There's many international internship type activities and community service projects available. So after you meet a general set of requirements, there's a lot of things that you can do. And I think Cadet Link has a lot to tell you, and I believe he went to Africa, so he can tell you a lot.
Yeah, the main thing I'd say about West Point summers is that they're really varied. Each cadet has to fulfill the basic requirements, but beyond that, really, you're doing stuff during your summers, but a lot of it is based on your choice. So for my first leadership detail, I was a platoon sergeant at cadet field training out of Buckner, so overseeing a platoon worth of rising sophomores. And then I've also done several academic experiences. I went to San Diego for a few weeks to go to a leadership, kind of a crash course in leadership. I went and interned with the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms Bureau in Washington, D.C. for 3 weeks. And then I also, most recently this summer, right before I came back home, I went to Uganda for 3 weeks on doing some academic research that ultimately is what's leading into my thesis. And then also, I was selected as the commander for the summer leader experience that some of you will hopefully be attending this summer. So if I had to say one thing, I'd say that it's really varied. You can do a lot with your summers here. But on the flip side, I was only home a week and a half between graduation day and when school started again. So you don't really get very much free time for yourself. And that was in 2 separate times. So I was home for 4 days one time, 3 days the other time, and that added up to a week. So
yeah, I personally also didn't go home most of my summers. I did go home for a week and a half this summer, but I know there are people who do feel the need to go home a lot more or feel the desire to, and I have friends who are cadets, obviously, who spent 7 weeks at home this summer because they have met all of their requirements prior to their rising senior year. So if you get done with all of your requirements, you can choose your leave time to go home and see your family or go on vacation or however you want to do it. But a lot of the experiences that and the opportunities you're going to have here are so compelling that you usually don't end up going home. You take your time to go to on these international or these domestic trips and internships.
Awesome, great answers. So yes, the summers are basically what you make them. They could be very busy doing fun things, or they could be just relaxed and relaxing at home. For me, I personally managed to get about 2 weeks each summer at home. Um, but in addition to those 2 weeks of being at home, I also went to Germany for about a month. What I did is CTLT, Cadet Troop Leadership Training, and where basically it's the Army's internship program where I went around with a second lieutenant and basically learned what being a platoon leader is and what's expected of me. After that 1 month long internship, I took 2 weeks and I basically toured Europe, backpacked with a couple of friends that were there as well. One of the summers, I also went on a academy exchange program, and so I went to Turkey for a little while, so that was kind of neat. And then another summer, one of my summer schools that I went to was SRT, Special Reactions Team, which in the civilian world is like equivalent to SWAT training. So basically, went in, cleared rooms, cleared buildings, and that was my summer. So I had a good time and no complaints.
Yeah, I don't have any complaints either. I think we have some more questions down there.
I've talked to a graduate from West Point, and he told me that I could easily get accepted for just my running abilities.
You run really fast.
You better run really, really fast. If I have to say one thing based on just a survey of the people, the cadets that I know here, is you need to be well-rounded. I don't really know anybody that only excelled in running. I don't know anybody that came just because they're a really, really good runner.
You're a pretty good runner, aren't you?
I'm a pretty good runner, so that's definitely not why I got in. So
I definitely agree. And you do have to have the academics and the leadership side. If you don't have that, you're probably not going to get in if you're just trying to get in based off of how fast you can run. In addition, I would say that if your interest is only in running and you're not going to make it once you get here, you have to realize that once you get here, the academics are very rigorous and the leadership that's going to be required of you is also very rigorous. So running is very important to West Point, I think, but also there's so many other aspects that you have to look at, and you have to realize that once you get here, if you really want to be happy, you're going to need to look at other things besides that, because we're here to become Army officers and we're here to serve the nation. And if you're willing to do that, then by all means.
Awesome, great answers. One additional thing, if you think you run that well, I'd say to go to www.goarmysports.com, and on the menu ribbon you'll find a tab called Recruits. Click on that, and that'll give you a list of all the sports that we currently recruit for. And running is, believe it or not, track, yes, is one of them. So fill out a small questionnaire and submit it, and the track team will get back with you if they're interested.
And you can also see the times of all the runners, and if you are looking for stats for any sport, they track all of that too. So if you want to see how you compare to people who are already on the team, those freshmen that are on the team or the freshmen who are at prep school, they also have all of that information as well. So.
Thank you.
So look at another question here, and I like this one because it pertains to my job here at West Point. It says, what are the physical requirements for West Point? So first off, to get into West Point, you'll take the candidate fitness assessment, and they will use that as part of your score that they look at when you're going through the application process to get in. Once you're at West Point, though, the physical requirements are very rigorous. Each year, you'll take different physical classes, kind of like PE classes, survival swimming, gymnastics, we call it military movement. You'll take a lifetime sport. You'll take boxing. And it's really varied, and you also have classes where you learn to instruct and run workouts for a platoon as something that you'll use while you're a platoon leader. But outside of that, there's other physical requirements. So each semester you're here, you have to take the Army Physical Fitness Test, which consists of push-ups, sit-ups, and a 2-mile run. So that's a huge emphasis. You always have to be in shape just so you can pass that. You need to maintain your baseline level of physical fitness. And that's just the same way in the Army. You'll get tested biannually on the Army Physical Fitness Test, and you have to pass that. So, and then also in addition, each year you will have to take a graded indoor obstacle course test. So if you go to if you go to YouTube and Google West Point IOCT, you'll see videos. We have a great indoor obstacle course set up. It's pretty awesome.
What's IOCT?
Indoor obstacle course test. So it's a really good tests functional fitness. So the APFT every semester and IOCT every year are the two kind of annual tests you have to do in addition to your physical classes.
Females, you also take a combatives course. There's two. There's one your freshman year and I believe one your junior year as well. So and that includes boxing and sort of basically like wrestling. So introduction to combatives. So females and males both take those courses.
But so one additional thing, if you're just now applying to West Point, so you obviously your biggest concern is the CFA. So for the CFA, I'd recommend you take a diagnostic. You know, go on your own and go through the test itself, and to identify the areas of weakness that you have. Some weaknesses are easy to fix with techniques. Some weaknesses are very difficult. For example, maybe a shuttle run is a simple way of technique. You know, you may shave off a few tenths of a second just by knowing how to turn. Basketball may be a technique that you can improve very easily. Strength are very difficult to gain in a short period of time. For example, if you're struggling with pull-ups or push-ups, you need to start working on those right now. So that's why I say, you know, give yourself a diagnostic, see what your areas of weakness are, and work on them. So that way, when you do take it for record and for your file, you know, you'll do well. What do we got next? Next question.
All right. So the next question is, how do you pick your major? So sophomore year, you will be asked, be given a window of time to talk to all of the representatives from each major, and you can talk to the any of the teachers you have or any of the counselors that are available in each major. And there's majors from literature to language majors. Pretty much there's, I believe, like 20 to 30, 32 maybe academic majors. So somewhere around there. Law, it's really enormous, the number of majors. A lot of people think that it's just engineering because we are a more engineering-based school, but as an American politics and French major, it's obvious you can choose a lot of different things. But sophomore year, you are given that window, and you can pretty much choose whatever you'd like, and you can also choose to double major as well.
Yeah, I concur with that. I'm a geography major here, but also to caveat that this school does have a history of producing people that know about engineering. So everyone takes. If you're not an engineering major, you will take a 3-course engineering minor, basically. We call it your engineering track, and through that you'll learn some of the basic engineering skills, which can later then be applied to your job as a lieutenant in the Army.
So what was your track?
I'm environmental track.
Okay.
I'm a civil engineering.
Cool. Okay. My track was electrical engineering, and my major was engineering management.
Okay. How much hearing loss is accepted getting into West Point / the Army?
All right. Well, that all depends obviously on what the doctors have to say. I don't have any specific numbers to tell you, but I'd recommend, you know, go once you get the information on how to make an appointment for your physician. In other words, we requested a DODMER physical. DODMER is Department of Defense Medical Evaluation Review Board. Go see a doctor. They'll give you a hearing exam, and they'll determine if you meet the minimum requirements. I don't have specific numbers right now, though. Is that it?
Yes, that is the last question. Is there? we'll definitely give you guys some more time. If you have any other questions, feel free to ask, even if it's about senior year, freshman year, the application process, prep school, semester abroad, any of those questions, feel free.
Also, I'm sorry, I missed your positions. What were they?
I'm the Public Affairs and Security Officer.
Okay.
I'm the physical development officer.
Nice. For what?
The brigade level physical development
Ah,
officer.
there you go. That's where I was when I was here.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I was
That's
brigade
awesome.
physical development officer. Yeah,
That's a good
absolutely.
job.
I can't complain. Worked very closely with DPE, and we went out running every day, and yeah, it was good.
Yeah,
Awesome.
that's good. That's a good time.
Somebody had asked on the chat site, how many cadets get to go to medical school approximately from the academy?
Okay, so my roommate actually is in the medical process right now, and I believe this year they accepted about 25. Everybody who was in the program senior year actually received the go-ahead from West Point to apply for med school. It's very, very competitive, particularly, especially for organic chemistry. That's usually how they weed people out, but my roommate right now is actually at one of her interviews in Philadelphia. So during your senior year is when you'll, in between junior and senior year, you'll take your test, and then you'll start applying to medical schools beginning of your senior year, and that's when you'll get your interviews scheduled. But usually about 25 people, and usually how it typically works is the people who last until senior year usually get the go-ahead from West Point.
So it's about 2%. So roughly 1,200 are in each class, give or take, and so about 2% get to go on to medical school. Here's another question. If I attend to West Point, how often do graduates go to airborne and ranger training?
I've been to airborne school.
You went to aerosol school, right?
No.
No, nothing.
What school did you go to?
The advanced medical training.
Oh,
here.
okay.
So combat CLS.
Oh, okay. So a lot of the majority of the cadets here have an opportunity, very easy opportunity, to go to airborne and air assault. I would say. Would you agree?
The two most.
Not so much ranger school. That'll happen later on in your career, but definitely there's a lot more than just airborne and air assault. For example, I did special reactions team, which is the MP school, and that's not very common, but it's also an opportunity that's available though.
Sapper school is a competitive tryout. There's also international airborne schools and international jungle schools available. Most of those are competitive. There's quite a few
A lot of
things to
schools.
do.
You have
There's a lot, yeah. Advanced combatives is another one. So if you really enjoy wrestling or any type of like fighting type
MMA type
activities,
style.
there's advanced combatives as well. So there's a big range of things you can do in terms of military training. There's a Marine Corps question and contact question. Yes, you can wear contacts at West Point.
The same rules apply that are in the Army apply to West Point, so you can't wear contacts when you're doing field training. It's a safety thing. Contacts melting to your eyes generally isn't a good thing. But when you're in the classroom, day-to-day basis, I used to wear contacts. And then also another thing, after you sign your commitment at the beginning of your Cal year, at the beginning of your junior year, sorry, using a West Point terminology, but at the beginning of your junior year, you can apply to try and get laser eye surgery. So I did that actually, called PRK, and so now I have 20/10 vision without glasses or contacts, and it's pretty awesome.
So I usually get, it's interesting. I usually get questions about getting that laser surgery done before coming to West Point. And I'd say probably you could wait, for a little while actually until you become a cadet. Another reason you may want to consider waiting is because, you may have the surgery, then you may become medically disqualified depending on when you get the surgery done and what kind of surgery. If you become medically disqualified and I have to submit a waiver for you, then that's going to be a long process, and odds are you may not come to West Point. So keep that in mind.
So another question about is there any way to graduate West Point as a Marine Corps officer? And short answer is yes, there is, but the long answer, it is a very competitive process, and there are very, very few West Point graduates that become Marine officers. I knew a first year that graduated last year and went into the Marines, went to the Marine Basic Officer course, and part of the reason he tried really hard because he is now a fourth generation Marine officer and has done a lot of work with Marines in the past. He was a prior service Marine, and they look at that kind of thing heavily when they're trying to consider whether or not they're going to allow someone to go into a different branch of service.
And not only West Point has to approve that, but the branch that you're trying to get into also has to approve that. So you need to make sure that you're a good candidate for that branch because they need to sign off on that as well.
So when I was a cadet, there was maybe 4 people that actually transferred branches. Do you know?
It's like less.
I don't think there was even 4. I think there was 2 people for the Marines last year and 1 for the Air Force.
It wasn't West Boston, was it? He went Army, right?
He went on.
Yeah, he went Army.
If you come to West Point, you need to go Army. If you want to
Yeah.
be a Marine, go to the Naval Academy, and good luck for yourselves.
It says, if I do not get accepted to West Point, would it be beneficial to attend the prep school or wait until the next year's application process? So I worked as a first sergeant at the prep school 2 years ago, and I would say that the prep school is extremely beneficial. Number one, because it gets you used to the environment of West Point. Number two, they can help you to increase your SAT scores if that's what you're struggling with. It gets you acclimated to the military environment. And then in addition, I would say that almost 90%, if not even a little higher, 90% of the people who go to prep school and apply to West Point get into West Point. So the very few that don't are for reasons of they either left or they had some disciplinary problem. But 90% from the prep school get in. In addition, you also get paid more and get to have a car while you're at prep school, which you get to give up once you become a freshman at West Point. So I would say it's definitely a great experience and a good idea if you get in.
And the way the prep school actually works is you'll apply to West Point, and then if you don't get in because you're struggling in one or two areas, then you'll be offered by the West Point admissions officers to attend the prep school. You don't apply directly to the prep school; you apply to West Point.
Great answers. Yes, absolutely. So you don't directly apply to the prep school. Every candidate that has a qualified, has a complete file and does not get an offer will be considered for prep school. So we'll look at you, and if we think that you would be a good fit for prep school, then we will send you an offer for prep school. But you're right, you can't apply for it directly. I was actually, I went to prep school as well. I was a soldier when I applied to West Point. The grades weren't that good. Been out of school for a little while, and somebody felt sorry for me. I went to prep school, and here I am.
How many cadets or how many people in that way? Can you scroll down?
So there's a question. It says, this individual is in the 8th grade and interested in West Point. That's awesome. And they were wondering, when did we know that we wanted to go into the Army, and when did we start preparing? Interesting question. Do you want to start?
Sure. I've had a long family history of people in the military, and so I've pretty much always knew that I wanted to go into the Army. It was pretty much as early back as I can remember, and really in elementary school and middle, I've pretty much always wanted to come to West Point as well, to be take that route to become a West Point officer.
I thought everybody just said that.
I'm
Actually,
actually, yeah.
Here. That's awesome.
You can ask my mom; she always says, "I always do it." So, I mean, I pretty much always have been really trying hard as far as like grades, athletics, other leadership opportunities. If you go on the West Point admissions page, there's a starting young tab, and I looked at that to try to plan out what my courses I was going to take in high school. Make sure I went to a very small school in Southwest Colorado, so I had to make sure that everything that West Point required was offered by my really small school. So,
Awesome.
yeah, I would say take a look at that starting young tab and try hard at everything you do.
All right, so I didn't know when I was 5 years old that I wanted to come here. I actually figured it out junior year of high school. I was approached by a lieutenant colonel who worked at my school. He was retired, and he's like, "Hey, you have good grades and you run fast." And he said, "You know, you've been working really hard in JROTC the past 3 years. Are you, interested in serving in the military?" Oh, sure. So when I started applying to other colleges in California, I started also applying for Army ROTC, and I was applying for other schools, and I decided to apply to West Point, and that's sort of when I figured it out. So I was definitely a late bloomer in that sense, but I'm here and I love it. So,
Nice.
but that's awesome that you're starting out this young, and we appreciate the support definitely.
All right. I didn't start so young either. Actually, I didn't know about West Point. When I was in high school, I would say junior year, the beginning of my junior year, I knew that I wanted to be in the army. But I didn't know to what extent. So I decided to enlist, and so I enlisted my junior year. I went off to basic training like 2 days after graduating high school, and then during my time in the army, I saw officers, and that kind of inspired me. I was like, okay, I want to be like that. My boss who's an officer. So that kind of inspired me, and then I kind of started looking into how to become an officer, and I found that West Point is an option, and so I applied to West Point. And obviously, it took a year to prep school, but then finally made it here. So I'd say I didn't know about West Point, even though I was born in New York, so that's kind of sad.
I have an
know.
excuse.
Yeah. But at least I knew I wanted to be part of the army. That's just that lifestyle clicked. I knew I wanted to be a part of something that's larger than myself, and I really like the camaraderie. I've always done well on sports teams, so it was just a natural step in the right direction for me. And then I realized there's such thing as West Point, and become an officer, and I decided, hey, why not? So that's my story.
So if you wear contacts or glasses, does this exclude you from certain activities? Nope.
No, you still have to do everything.
You're
Yeah.
stuck. You're
Yep.
doing everything. How do you stay positive and hopeful throughout the application process? That's a long time ago. I would say definitely just budget your time wisely in doing your application, and don't push things to the last minute. It's a very rigorous application process with getting the physical and all the stuff. It's a lot more than a lot of other colleges. If you're applying to civilian colleges, it's definitely a lot more rigorous than those. But I would just say that try your best and try to represent yourself as much as you can, because we are not going to get to see you in person. So realize that you need to represent yourself well via paper, or in this day, electronic screens. So just do the best you can, and if you're having a bad day, that's not the day to start. So just try to go in with an open mindset, and just realize that you're going to have to sell yourself.
Also realize, go into it with the mindset that this application is going to take a very, very long time. But in the end, if that in-state, if you really want to go to West Point, that's the in-state that you're hoping for. So just hang in there until you get that in-state.
No, I agree. It's a very, very complicated and long application process. But the application process itself, I would say, is a selection process. A lot of people just get tired of the application and say, I'm not going to do this anymore. So what I'd say to you is that, don't be that one person that quits. Because, if you stay the course, continue the application, people ahead of you may drop out just because it's too hard or they're no longer interested. But don't be that one that drops out and you could have received an offer if you just stuck it out and completed the application. That's my advice.
Yep, I agree. So does West Point accept most AP credits, and which are they? Okay, so I know AP Chemistry and AP Physics, if you take those and you pass the AP test, you're going to have to take an additional test here at West Point. So during cadet basic training, I believe you can also do that for English, but you have to take a test at West Point in addition to the AP test. I know firsthand that AP Psychology is not accepted, but there is a psychology class that they want you to go through freshman year, specifically oriented to West Point and the Army. So that one is definitely not, but English and some of the sciences are, and also history. So those are definitely accepted.
I think I agree. So it's very basic courses. Yes. Getting a 4 or a 5 in your AP courses will give you basically a ticket to sit down and take the validation exam. Exactly. So that's what you want. That's what you want to shoot for, 4 or 5. But no, it's not going to be an automatic. Hey, you don't have to attend this class anymore. You actually have to sit through a validation test, and then West Point will determine if you validated a course or not.
The AP tests are very similar to the validation tests. So if you are prepared for those and you do well, you should do well on the tests here. So don't worry about trying to find study guides and stuff. It will be very, very similar to the AP tests.
And also, on that note, if you do not validate courses or don't score 4s or 5s on all your AP tests, so if you still get in, just because you don't validate courses doesn't mean you're setting yourself up for failure at West Point. You can be very successful still without validating any courses. I didn't
validate any, and I'm a double major who did a semester abroad, so my course load is a little bit heavier now, but I had no problem with not validating any courses at all. And that's honestly, if you don't for some reason validate the course and you feel comfortable with that, you're just going to go into that class knowing a lot more, and you'll have more time to focus on things maybe you don't understand as quickly, and it'll help your GPA also if you're just very understanding of a certain class already. If you go in with a big knowledge base, it's going to be a lot easier for you, and you're going to get better grades, which is helpful also.
And another thing with that, no one goes through West Point alone, I would say. With all your academic classes, I'm sure they could both attest to this, but you, at some point here at West Point, you will need help with your academics, and your classmates that you turn to and for help. It's your classmates that you turn to for help. You can turn to your instructors, but at nighttime when you're trying to finish those last couple of problems on the problem set, it's your classmates that you're going to go for help. And so, if you don't validate a test, but you're really good at chemistry, you'll have the privilege of being one of those classmates that people come to you for help, and I think that's a really honorable thing.
Definitely, 100%. This school is a lot different in terms of the camaraderie that you have with your classmates. Classmates are a lot more willing here than other schools to help each other, and I've heard it from people who went to other colleges here how competitive. And yes, West Point is very competitive, but we're also here to help each other, and nobody wants to see each other fail. So, and you have a lot of people who went through that class before and have notes, and almost every class has a couple of cadets who saves all of their old exams, all of their old homework, all of their notes, and they compile that and they basically give it out and to help you guys prepare. So, and West Point doesn't even have a problem with, looking at notes and all that stuff, as long as, you're honorable during the test and you're doing the right thing. But there's always those cadets who have those resources and are willing to help.
What about the instructors as a resource? When I was a cadet,
Awesome.
gave us each instructor basically gave us their phone number. He said, hey, you have until 8:30 at night to call. Other than that, you're on your own. So have you experienced that as well? Are they still doing it?
Yeah.
I would say not even calling me at 8:30 at night. It's just as long as you're not waking up my kids in the middle of the night. Give me a call anytime if you're really stuck and you need help. They're very, very accessible.
Yeah, definitely. Usually at the beginning of each course, the teacher will hand out their home phone number and even their cell phone number. Hey, if it's too late to call, shoot me a text. I might be up and I'll answer it. So I would say that the teachers are truly amazing at this school, and because a lot of them also went to West Point, or many of them did, they're a lot more understanding of the culture, and they know the demands you have in addition to your academics that you're dealing with. So they're a lot more apt to help because they're very understanding of your time and all of the things that you have to do.
And the majority of them, I would say, a good amount of them are actually old grads, West Point graduates. So that's another thing. So they understand what you're going through, and that's why they're so willing to help. And that's my experience at least.
Definitely. Any more questions that we're missing?
Application.
Is there cost
So-
to prep school? No.
And then also another one, when should I start the application process? Junior year, question mark. So the way that I did it, and I think a way that is successful for a lot of people, is you start your application to West Point actually your junior year when you apply to. When I went through it was called SLS, but now it's called SLE, the Summer Leader Experience. If you go on the admissions webpage, you'll see information for it. And when you actually apply to SLE, that becomes the beginning of your application to West Point. So you're already ahead of the game at that point. Your application packet's already started. You've already had the West Point admissions, people that are going to admit you into West Point are the ones that are reviewing your packet for SLE. And that'll give you a good sense of not only where you are, but if the areas that you need to work at to improve your scores so that you can get into West Point. And they'll help you out trying to get congressional nominations, point you on the right path towards all of that. So I would say junior year is not too early, and start with that application to the Summer Leader Experience.
Right, and the earliest you could apply is January of your junior year. And the beautiful thing about that is that, yes, you do have now a lot of time to learn more about West Point and continue on with your application and learn about how you can improve your file. Also, you'll have an opportunity to talk to a field force member. We have volunteers that work with candidates like yourself who are applying, and they mentor you through the process. They mentor you through the process. So on your portal, there's a tab called Liaisons, and if you click on that, we'll give you the point of contact of at least 2 field force members that will help you through the process. Did you guys have a field force member help you out? What's their role?
I know that my senior year, when I was first starting my application, they had basically like a small conference for those in their area who were applying, and they basically just sort of walked through the application process so we knew what to expect and we knew like when deadlines were and all of that stuff. And they also were willing to help us do practice interviews for congressmen, because you do have to do some of that type of stuff. You will possibly have to do a congressional internship, or excuse me, interview. So they had the opportunity, if you want to do a practice interview or talk about some of the questions that they may ask. So they had a lot of resources available for candidates.
I actually didn't contact my field force
Because you knew
member.
you wanted to come.
I knew I wanted to come here. I pretty much knew what the whole application process was. And then also one of the other guys on my high school swim team, his dad was a retired lieutenant colonel from the Army, and he actually worked at West Point admissions.
Oh,
So
there you go.
I had some help there too. With
So
the
you did have a
admissions
field force member helping you.
It was an unofficial field force member.
So, are there any religious areas for worship? Yes. Pretty much every religion has some sort of religious service area here. There are practicing cadets from anything from Mormon to Christian, any type of Christian to basically everything you can think of. So, yes, there is a place for you to go.
There are also several Army chaplains here stationed at West Point, so if you do have different religious preference that's not already established and offered here, the purpose of Army chaplains is to support you in your spiritual needs, so they'll help you out with that.
Let's see.
Third time here. I think it's wrap up.
There's a couple questions up there. So, prep school, we talked about prep school a little bit. Did you have to cut your hair? No! That's part of the reason I was like, no VMI. I didn't want to cut my hair, so no, you don't have to cut your hair. You just have to put it in a bun.
The BMI you do?
VMI, you have to cut your hair extremely short, and I definitely would never want to do that. And all you have to do is put your hair in a bun every day. So, yay, West Point.
I tried putting my hair in a bun, they wouldn't let me, so that's not entirely true. But you just have to adhere to the Army hair regulations. So obviously I have to have my hair short. She has to have hers up in a bun, but you're not forced to cut your hair.
Yeah, a girl
As a
asked
female.
it, so.
Oh,
After my fight, can I join the National Guard? If so, yes, there is a reserve. There's an 8-year commitment, which 5 years active and 3 reserve is required. So, I believe if you want to get out of the extra 3 years, you can do 3 years active or 3 years reserve. So,
I don't believe it's actually that difficult to go to the National Guard after your 5-year commitment's up. So that'd be very easy.
We're just gonna scroll through here.
Would alumni references help me?
Every reference that you submit, we will review and read. Whether they will help you as far as points towards your file, no. But if it does come down to you, maybe another candidate, you know, we're looking at who's going to get the offer, then I'm going to start diving very deep in your file and read all those letters of recommendations. So in that sense, yes, it can help.
We have time for 2 more questions.
All right, 2 more questions.
2 more questions.
After validating a course, what do you do instead? So a lot of, as a freshman, you don't have an academic major, so you have a lot of just like general ed that you have to take. If you, for some reason, validate a lot of classes, you may be able to start taking some of your major classes early, or just start knocking off other requirements. So sophomore year, most people take physics, and so on. So junior year, most people take international relations. That's a mandatory class. You can start taking the mandatory classes from your sophomore and junior year to get those knocked out, and then take classes for your major earlier than some people.
Yeah, one difference between West Point and your typical civilian civilian college is that there's a lot of required courses that West Point has you take, because they want you to graduate not just only in the capacity of your major, but they want you to be really well rounded. So you take courses, as she mentioned, you take basic sciences, psychology, philosophy, English. They really want you to be well rounded. As a engineering major, typically you wouldn't take a lot of English courses at CU Boulder, but here at West Point you will take a junior English class.
So 2 last questions. How many people are picked from each congressional district? So it depends on I believe it depends on how many people are already currently in your district who are at West Point. So your congressman specifically could have like 1 slot left, or he could have 5, he or she could have 5. So it's just depending upon how many they have available to them. And I know my congressman didn't specifically tell me how many he had when he was doing my interview and all my applications. He didn't say I have this many applying and this many slots available, but I believe it is based on how many they're allowed to recommend each year, and that varies for them.
So generally, each member of Congress has 5 appointments for West Point. 4 of them are usually at the academy, so for the freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, and the 5th one is pretty much on deck. That's for the vacancy that's going to be created by the graduating senior.
Mm-hmm.
So that's basically when he sends a nomination, you're on that list. He was nominating you to go into the slot that was created by the graduating senior.
So if, for instance, if a congressman had a freshman, sophomore, and a junior here, and that would be 3 slots, he only has 2 available slots left?
Yes, he could
Okay.
nominate.
So it's dependent upon how many people from your district are currently at West Point. That determines how many slots that your congressman has left.
And so for each appointment, the congressman or congresswoman or member of Congress generically is allowed to nominate 10 people for each slot. So that's how it works. So technically, yes, if a congressman was nominated against 2 appointment slots at West Point, he would submit 20 names. So it just depends on how many people are also applying out of your district. Some districts may have 5 people.
Some may be more competitive also.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So some districts have more people who apply than others. So,
Mhm.
And then how many nominations do you need? 1 is fine. If you can get 1, if you can get your congressman to sign or woman to sign off on it, you're golden. JROTC also has a nomination. There's also vice presidential nomination. So if your parents were in the military, if you did JROTC or some form of that civil patrol, so that's a nomination in itself. So if you don't get the congressman or woman to sign off on you, there's other routes. Don't worry.
So yes, you only need 1 nomination to come to West Point, but you want to improve your chances by having multiple nominations.
Definitely.
So that's It's pretty much a short answer.
It's like a lottery ticket. More lottery, more buys, more chance of winning, right?
Absolutely, yes.
All right, that's about all the time we have.
Thank you very much. Well, first of all, thank you very much. I
Yeah,
appreciate
thank you so
your
much.
time.
Good
And I'm
luck.
sure the candidates also as well. Once again, 60-30-10, 60% academics, 30% leadership potential, and 10% CFA. Keep those numbers in mind. Also, continue working on completing your application. You had a lot of great tips today, a lot of great information from the cadets here. Use that information wisely, continue motivation in completing the application. And,
Hey, on that, I just want to tell you, excuse me, we've got, we'll be on these chats once a month from now until probably next May, and we will continue to do some webinars. We'll send out invitations. If you're interested in West Point, if you're a senior, I encourage you right now to apply and open an application, because right now is the time to apply. If you're a junior, our application's open beginning of mid-January. And I would tell you, you need to have the SATs or PSATs, or the ACTs, or what's called the plan, which is the PACT. Have those ready so that maybe you can go to the summer leaders experience if you want to and test drive West Point, see if it's the right fit for you. But if you're a senior, you need to be applying now. If you're a junior, mid-January. If you're younger than that, then I would contact us. Make sure we have your contact information. And keep your interest in West Point and keep working towards your goal of getting into this prestigious academy. Good luck to you, and thank you for hanging out with us here tonight. Have a good night.
Good luck.
thank you.